We may have more people joining us, but good morning, good afternoon, maybe even good evening to some of you. Thank you for joining us for this webinar today. So my name is Davis Mathai. I'm a solutions architect here at Cireson, and it's a pleasure for me to host this webinar really. And I've got with me Andreas Sobczyk from Danish Broadcasting Corporation to present automation and self-service and CMDB in the real world. So how Danish Broadcasting and Andreas specifically have used all these different solutions, System Center and Cireson really, to automate huge tranches of their data center processes. So I'm very excited to have Andreas on the phone with me today, and he'll be doing the majority of the presenting. You'll be all glad to hear. So before we do start, just a couple of things from a housekeeping perspective. So you're all aware, I will be recording this webinar today, and after the meeting, we'll be putting this over to our Vimeo site, so you can download or watch at your leisure again in the future if you wanted to. Secondly, I'm sure you'll all have questions during the webinar. Please do feel free to post them into the questions bar in the GoToWebinar console. What I'll do is I'll be monitoring them, and if they're really relevant to what Andreas is talking about, I will stop him and then just sort of interject. If not, what we'll do is keep most of the questions toward the end of the webinar, if that's okay with everyone as well. And then just by way of an agenda for today, just a quick round of introductions. I've mentioned myself. I'll give Andreas a second now just to introduce himself. And then we'll just set the scene around why automate. Hopefully, very obvious to all of us on the webinar today. And then the meat of the presentation, I'll hand over to Andreas to talk about how and what they've done within Danish Broadcasting around self-service and automation. And then at the end, we'll just summarize, look at some of the resources from Cireson to support you after this webinar, and open up to some question and answers at the end. So Andreas, if I give you the floor now just to do a quick introduction from yourself. Thanks again for joining us today.
Yeah, my name is Andreas Sobczyk. I'm working as an internal IT consultant in Danish Broadcasting Corporation as a cloud and data center specialist, focusing system center automation all around this to support our transformation into the private cloud. Yeah, this is pretty much it.
Fantastic. Yeah, so you've got some great credentials, Andreas, so thanks again for joining us today and presenting with us. So just to set the scene really for this session, and hopefully a lot of this is going to be very obvious to all of you, but I thought it's worth just covering some of these points anyway. So in terms of automation in reality, it's really part of all of our everyday lives, I guess. So every time we use the ATM, online banking, or we use a self-service checkout at the grocery store, we use self-service and automation. But in the workplace, sometimes this concept can be a bit more challenging, especially in the IT realm. But there are quite a few reasons, I guess, that we should want to automate, and the benefits of why automate really. First and foremost, I guess it saves time. And obviously there's all these benefits around repeatability and optimizing processes. But if you think about some of the role of traditional IT in the workplace, a lot of delays and bottlenecks, I guess, all of us have experienced with delivering services. So take, for example, something as simple as doing a password reset. In the past, typically the end user would have to call or open a ticket with a service desk, and then he or she would have to wait until the ticket was seen to, processed, and then resolved. But by shifting this ability to reset passwords, as a simple example, back to the end user, this whole waiting period is very much eliminated. And in the same scenario, we can conclude then that self-service and automation really can boost productivity levels. So during the time that the end user spent waiting for the ticket to be resolved, they're not productive, right? So because the systems needed couldn't be accessed without the new password, all that kind of stuff. If the IT department can then hand over that responsibility or the capability to the end user, we have a much better end user experience and a much quicker resolution. And the same thing with more complex processes, so things that have multiple steps. If we can get rid of that manual intervention, that data transfer between different departments, different technologies, if we can do that in an automated fashion, we can reduce the time to resolution or the time to results significantly, potentially. And hopefully that's what we're going to see from Andreas later today as well. And then the front of automation, so you can automate a lot of great things and deliver some really complex workflows, but adoption is key from my perspective and from Cireson as well. So the self-service capability, or the portal by which the end user can request and receive these services, is going to be extremely important as well. So the usability of your self-service portal is going to be very important in terms of the tools that you select. So again, I'm convinced this is where Cireson really plays a part, and hopefully you'll see that in this webinar too. But overall, I think what the key thing to bear in mind is, and hopefully you're all on board with the statement that everyone should be doing self-service and automation. It's just, how do you start that journey? How do you get through? What do you select in terms of the processes to automate? And all of these good things are some of the key challenges, I guess, to get on that journey. And hopefully, again, today, we'll have a good insight of how really enterprise organization in Denmark has achieved some great results through this process. And then on the back of this again, so the self-service automation side, the self-service portal being key again, the key thing I just wanted to highlight on this slide, and hopefully all of you are aware of this already and are already using it if you use Service Manager, is that the Cireson self-service portal is now free to the community. And included within that is our HTML knowledge base, the out-of-the-box dashboards, the ability to send announcements to end users based on their roles and AD groups, and obviously because of the way the system is architected, we have that really fast web interface with a cache database, as well as the adaptive UI to enable very nice multi-platform support. So just to bring that again to the forefront of everyone's minds, if you haven't used the self-service portal community edition, again free of charge, please do go ahead and download it from the Cireson website and download it and use it within your Service Manager implementations. And with that, you'll all be glad to hear that's my last slide. And what I'll do now is hand over to Andreas. So Andreas, I'm just going to make you presenter. Hopefully this is going to go smoothly. And whenever you're ready, yeah, please do take over. And thanks again for the session, for joining us for the session, and look forward to what you have to say.
So, are you able to see my screen now?
I can, yeah. I can see the slide.
Good. Okay. So, what is Danish Broadcast Corporation? Danish Broadcast Corporation is the biggest media house in Denmark, hosting 6 TV channels, 8 radio stations, big variety of apps, event-based apps. So, when we run a specific TV show, we need an app for this TV show. Then we also have a website, which is the second largest website in Denmark. We have some concert halls, chorus, orchestra, a lot of different media stuff. From an infrastructure perspective, we have a strategic platform of Microsoft and System Center to host our private cloud infrastructure. Roughly 1,000 Windows servers and 300 Red Hat Linux. Use big variety of cloud services. All our streaming, all TV and radio we are sending is available for free online streaming. So we have Akamai as our streaming provider. We have a huge media archive, lots of files, lots of data, and with all this stuff to handle, we quickly realized we needed some automation. We were struggling to keep up with the demand on new services, new servers, and therefore we quickly ended up like this guy, paddling water all day, getting nowhere. So for that, we started our project in 2014 based on Service Manager and Orchestrator under the name IT Maturity, to stop doing provisioning and operations all the time, but start to think smarter and automate stuff. For those of you who don't know Service Manager, Service Manager is Microsoft's ITSM solution. It's based on the same core as Operations Manager, So the foundation for everything is management packs. So if you can do management packs, you can modify and adapt everything in the system to your required needs, add fields, relationships, all this stuff. The goal for the project was more standardized and automated infrastructure, a more private cloud mindset. Secondary, it was to build up a new dynamic CMDB, leveraging on the relationships built in Service Manager through the various connectors. The strongest part for me in Service Manager is its ability to integrate with the entire System Center suite and automatically build all these relationships between all the resources in your environment. So it pulls in data from Active Directory, Operations Manager, Configurations Manager, Virtual Machine Manager, and automatically figures out what the different relations between the resources is. So we get the ability to collect all the data and do reporting across many different systems. We quickly got limited by the out-of-the-box portal delivered by Microsoft. They have a front-end portal for Service Manager, which is only good for self-service requesting. If you want to interact more like analyst perspective, there is no way from Microsoft to do that. So we found the Cireson solution and teamed up with Cortec, which is the premium partner for Cireson in Denmark, and they helped us implementing, and we were quickly up running and had a much more satisfying front end to interact with our Service Manager. Even though Service Manager is a full ITSM system, we don't use it for incident handling. We only use it for CMDB and self-service, and we only use it in IT infrastructure, so it's not a user-funded service yet. Right now it's for our own good, and by time we will probably go and present it to our developers so they can order what they need themselves. So the core of our CMDB model is business services. We want IT infrastructure to deliver services instead of servers. We want to care more about the services because servers, they live and die, but services should hopefully stay alive. A business service in our model, you can adapt it to your needs. It consists of servers, databases, service accounts, and other resources used by the service. We gradually add in more and more features into our business services, but for now we focus to group our servers into services. If you take the whole perspective and say I want to group servers and service accounts and databases and cloud solutions in one action, it can be pretty hard to handle such a big transition in your organization. So if you want to follow this model, keep your ambitions down, start slowly, and then build up when you get more confident in our model. A server can only belong to one business service. So if a server is servicing more than one service, we make it into its own business service and create a relationship between the services instead. An example is something like I have on the screen here. We have a SQL Server HODL, which hosts multiple SQL databases for multiple websites or applications. And therefore, the SQL's HODL is not a member of the specific service it's providing to. It's a separate service called SQL Server HODL number 1. Otherwise, if you have a dedicated SQL Server to your websites, services, Service Manager has its dedicated SQL service, Operations Manager has a SQL service, then they are all a part of the same service, and we add all the servers into the same business service. In that way, it's easier to automate stuff around your business services so you don't impact multiple services at once. If we, for example, had this SQL Server member of both Service A and Service B, and we were interacting with automation into business service, website service A, the chance that we do some changes to the SQL Server also hosting server B is too big. That's why we split it up. To build a new business service, we have divided it into 4 steps. Initial creation, resource provisioning, final service information, and validation. So the first step in our process is to create the basic business service, where we gather information about who is the owner, who is the responsible manager, information about the requirements to SLA, which environment it's hosting, and what business domain it belongs to. Then we know who is paying and what this service is supposed to do and what the SLA level we have to keep on this. When we have our business service in place, we can start to provision resources. It could be a virtual machine, so we go and provision a virtual machine, say this new virtual machine is belonging to this service. We go and select name, description, backup window, all this. And if I have selected a SLA level requiring 2 servers doing the same, so if in our model, if you want higher than bronze SLA, you need a highly available cluster for all services in your service. It could also be SQL databases. This is also part of resource provisioning we have automated in our solution. It could be service accounts or applications, and from here you can just move on and provision new resources, whatever you need. Say you had a website farm where you can host websites, you could provision a new website for this business service, and so on. In that way we get all the resources required by our business service grouped into the business service, and we can easier control, manage who is paying what. When a business service is killed, often people tell us to take down the servers, but they always forget to tell us to delete the SQL databases and clean up the service accounts. So when the auditing comes, we have hundreds of unused service accounts and we cannot explain why. When all the resources is provisioned and we are ready to move on to the go live stage of a business service, I should say this process is very much adapted into our project model on how we build projects in Danish Broadcast. So when we have the service provisioned and we are ready to go live, we have a better knowledge of who is the infrastructure experts in this service, who is the application experts, do we have any end users we can identify, we have some final documentation we can link to, and we know which services our new service is dependent on. And here you will typically all your services depending on Active Directory and DNS and stuff like this. When we have this last information entered on our business service, we are ready to go and validate the information and allow it to go live and put into production. This will go through a review in the server infrastructure department to check that all critical services is supported by minimum 2 servers, so everything is highly available if it's required by the service. We will review the documentation, is there the needed documentation, and we are happy from an infrastructure point. Then we will send it on to operations that needs to verify that they have the necessary documentation to keep this service alive and to get it up running if something breaks. Also, they are going to review that the necessary monitoring has been created in Operations Manager, so they get the alarms needed if something breaks. And lastly, the owner of the service has to approve that the service is now ready for go live. So with all this, let me show you a bit how this could look like in the portal. One second. This is our Service Manager portal with the Cireson on top, and we have all our business services. If I want to go and find a business service, I can go into configuration items. Select the class business service and find all business services in our environment. If we take an example like operations manager, then we get the details that it is under a gold SLA. It belongs to the infrastructure domain. It's System Center Operations Manager. We have no external knowledge. The service is actually running in service, so it's go live. It's a production environment. We have all the related servers to the business service. Right now there is a limitation in the Cireson portal that it cannot show relationships out of the box in the portal. So a way to work around this is to create a text field and then create a workflow to populate this text field with the relationships on the services. The same is going for the service accounts. They are also related to the business service, but you cannot see them in the portal unless you make them into a text field. We can see who is the infrastructure experts and application experts, the owner, service responsible, and a description of the service. To get a better overview of the service, right now we have created a SQL report to extract all the information in a better view and to have something to send out to the service owners. So this link we got here, linking to the SQL report here. And with this document we have something you can send out to the owners to validate on a regular basis that this is how their services look like. They have this service running still, they are still dependent on these services. It's still Bo who is the owner and responsible. It's still the same people managing the application and the infrastructure. This gives you a way, if you make a workflow that automatically sends out some form of validation to your owners, this will give you some sort of validation that you have valid information in your business services. Because you are not always told, if it's a big organization like here, that somebody has created in the other end of the building and some other people has taken over the services. We have our SLA chart. We have a description for how updating is rolled out. And then we get a more nice list of all our servers required for Operations Manager. We can see if they're virtual, physical. We can see what patch group they belong to. Short description of the function and where they're placed. Same goes for the backup. We can see which backup jobs each server belongs to. As you can see, we are still in the progress of populating all information into the new CMDB. And we can see the service accounts used by the services. So we can quickly get an overview of this. If we take it from the Service Manager console view, we have business services here. You can see all our business services. I have pre-opened the Operations Manager business service, and here you get all the same information, and you are able to edit into the information on who is the owners, who is this. Some of these fields, like the service responsible, is not a field that is out of the box in Operation or in Service Manager. So here you can go in and modify it to your needs, so you get the fields needed. We have created a whole tab for this, so we can have a link for the report, we can have a link for the knowledge, and we have our custom relationship with service accounts. I can from here select a server, click open, and get all the information about my servers. You can see the DNS name, IP addresses, serial numbers, and who is the custodian on this server, and if it is running or not, is it retired or not. And again, we have our custom fan with the description of what the server is doing, where it's placed, base management, controller address, the patch group it belongs to, the backup, and then we have a read-only field which is populated by workflow to tell us which business service this belongs to. I know there is something coming up in the portal. I don't know, Davis, if you have anything new on this, but you will be able to interact more with your configuration items through the portal in some time, but I don't think there is any time frame on it.
Yeah, that's right. Great question. So the ability to search and link multiple CIs is a popular feature request, as Andreas has just mentioned. It's on the list within our community site, so we'll talk about community site a bit later. So it's a popular request, and we're still looking into prioritizing that. So hopefully we'll get some news in the next few weeks and months. So yeah.
Good. So I hope this gave you a bit overview on how our business service model is working, and if you want to take this approach as well, you should adapt it into your needs. You can do it what you want, but this is some inspiration at least for the business service part. So let's go back to the slide deck, take a bit on self-service and request, because to easier provision all these business services and resources, we have taken advantages of the strong automation capabilities in Orchestrator that, together with Service Manager and Cireson, provides us with a rich front-end self-service portal. 2 years ago, when I started here, actually for this project, we had just as many ways to provision servers as we had employees. We never knew if it was done right. There was no described process, so everybody was spinning up servers on their own from what they knew was right. It could take days, or it took days, to provision even a virtual machine, because before you had it up running, patched, if you even patched it, registered it in the old CMDB, IP tables, all this, it could take a long time. Now we have fully automated everything around provisioning new servers, Windows as well as Linux, virtual and physical, and we can now provision a new virtual machine within 10 minutes and half an hour to 60 minutes for hardware server. Most importantly is maybe not that you save some time, because a lot of the time spent for installing a new server is waiting, but even more important is that we are now sure, because it's an automated process, that everything is done right every time. So when I go and provision a server, it will automatically get registered in Service Manager CMDB. It will automatically put my name on it, and it will automatically relate it to the business service I selected. And there's none of these steps I'm able to skip, because it's automated process. All these self-service, we have built it into our environment now, enable us to lock down our Hyper-V environment completely. So only the two Hyper-V administrators has access to the actual hosts behind Hyper-V, and no unwanted changes is made to the servers. So all interaction to our Hyper-V platform, which is our private cloud, is done through the service requests. This gives us a much more stable and much more consistent environment, because we know everything is done by the Hyper-V administrators and is not added unnecessary memory or disks or CPUs to servers. In our old VMware environment, which we had before, where everybody was administrators, we had servers with 32 processors and 100 gigabytes of RAM, but they never used it. And this isn't possible when we have limited what people can set through the self-service. Let me show you how the self-service part of our portal looks in real life. So this is our front page for self-servicing. I have some tasks around Hyper-V administration, server administration, accounts, database, all the interaction with infrastructure as a service on our platform, some monitoring, and interaction with our services. But let me go through some of the bigger automation self-service we have made. This is our service request for provisioning a new Hyper-V virtual machine running Windows. So first I have to go and select which business service this belongs to, and I put it on my test service. I just enter the name. By putting TST or UDV, this is our postfixes for which kind of, if it's a testing or development server, this will automatically go in and put the server into our test operations manager instead of our production. I write a short description of what the server is going to do, select what operating system I want on the server, what size I want the virtual machine to be, Active Directory domain, the network, and then what cloud I want to provision it. We have 2 data centers, and we have a cloud for each data center, and then we have one stretching over the 2 data centers. If I select the one stretching the 2 data centers, it pops on an extra window, if you see. Then I can select what primary data center I want my VM to be in. So it can move between the 2 data centers, but I can select it. I prefer it to be in one data center. And this pop-up is done with the Cireson's advanced request offering, which is a very nice feature when making dynamic forms, because there is no dynamic forms out of the box in Service Manager. This is something Cireson has made. So you can make conditional questioning in your forms, giving a more dynamic experience for the end users. They don't see unintended questions. I select what patch group it's going in, so I'm sure all my servers is in a patch group. And I select if I want backup on the server or not. Then I simply click Save. And hopefully before the end of this webinar, we should have a new virtual machine fully prepared, registered in our Service Manager platform, and ready to go. Let's just give it a few seconds to load. And we now see the service request is running. This was the first step we took action into on automation. It was provisioning virtual machines, because this was a huge pain. You could also do something like provisioning service accounts. We have integrated everything here as well with the business services. So you just go in and enter what domain, Active Directory domain you want the account to be in, the name of the account, and what servers it should be allowed to log onto. It will then automatically go into our password management database, provision a password for the user, enter it into Active Directory, and you will never have this clear text password entered anywhere. We have even gone so far to automate firmware update for our Hyper-V clusters. We are running Cisco's Unified Compute System for our hardware platform, and this Cisco has done some very cool by delivering a full PowerShell module to interact with your physical servers through PowerShell. This means that I can now go in and cluster firmware and update a whole Hyper-V cluster to the newest firmware available for the Fabric Interconnect in UCS and the newest driver set. So with one click, I can select my cluster, click Save, and it will automatically firmware update and driver update one node at a time in my cluster. This is usually something people never get done once they have the hardware up running. They never update the drivers and the firmware on the servers until they have some problems. We have the same for Windows Server update for the clusters. We can patch a whole Hyper-V cluster just from a single push of a button. We then, after we had control of our infrastructure resources and we could easily provisioning this, we were starting to looking into how we could automate management pack development in the Operations Manager, so we could easily provision new monitoring without too much knowledge of Operations Manager. For that, me and a former colleague has created a PowerShell module to be able to create management pack from PowerShell only. This module will be public in a few weeks, I hope, so you can do something but like the same, and this will give you the ability to create automated management packs in Operations Manager. If you want to monitor Windows service, you can do that. If you want to catch some specific events, you can do that. We're just in the final phase of developing it, the last details, and it will be public available on my blog within a few weeks, so keep out for my Twitter blog. Also, adding and removing network devices was a big pain because our networking team, of course, is not used to Operations Manager, and we have all network monitoring of Operations Manager, so we also automated this. And then the 3 steps we have for creating, finalizing, and validating a business service is also done in here. Since we cannot interact with any CIs in the portal yet, we have self-service around this as well. It's an easy way to create some way to interact with your CIs, where we can go and find the name, description, we can enter the owners, what environment it should go into, and the SLA environment. And there is really no boundaries on what you can automate. Usually when people come and tell me, ask if I can automate something, I usually say if you can draw it, we can probably also automate it. Maybe you cannot automate every single task, then you make some manual, but at least it's an automated process in some way. I would say the most advanced one we have created yet is the fully automated conversion of a virtual machine from VMware to Hyper-V using double-take. This requires a lot of steps and a lot of automation, where we can go and find all the machines in VMware and then convert it into a Hyper-V machine with no downtime. With the portal you can also interact with other services. You have the ability to add some links for different websites. Let me show you. We have a dashboard showing some Power BI data. So you have one single portal and you can put all your links and easier get an overview of stuff. I have created a dashboard in Power BI so we can get an overview on how many servers we have and stuff like this. It can also be we have squared up on top of our Operations Manager. You could put a shortcut button to this squared up solution, and then you have one portal where everybody go into to interact with the infrastructure and use the links in there. So how do you get started with automating some of your processes? My advice would be to start with some simple task. Maybe provisioning and deprovisioning is not the first task you should go into. Start with something simple like approving or deleting SCOM agents, set maintenance mode for the server, expanding virtual disks in your hypervisor, or some everyday tasks. So you get the feeling on how it works and how you should create your scripts. A good way to start with automating is to draw your process you want to automate. So get a pen and paper and start drawing from start to finish. What do you want to do? Like this one here, when our provisioning process, I know I want to deploy a machine, I want to give the VSD the right name, I want to enter it into the CMBD, I want some common applications deployed, added it into a software update and stuff like this. Just identify all the tasks needed to get your final resource. Then afterward, when you have drawn this, you can figure out which processes can I automate, which processes can I not. You can see here, to add the backup on the server is not an automated process in our case, and therefore we have created a manual activity in Service Manager. So we still have the step with us in the automated process. It's just a manual task. When you know which you can automate, which you cannot, you can start to identify what input parameters you need. This could be done something like this, and then when you know what input parameters you can have, you can figure out what type should it be. Should it be free text field? Should it be a list? Should it be a query result? Or what should it be? A query result is used to target CIs that you already have in your CMDB. And this could be something like the operating system templates. These are synchronized from Virtual Machine Manager into Service Manager. And therefore we have a CI for each template available to deploy. So here you could use a query result, and this will automatically update the possibilities you can select in the portal when you add a new operating system template into your Virtual Machine Manager. The same for the backup jobs. You can create a class like we have done. So we have a specific class that contains all the backup jobs, and then you can select each backup job, and you just need to update in the backup job class which is available. Also, we have used Orchestrator for all our automation because right now there is no possibility to interact with the SMA or Azure automation. I know Cireson now has some stuff to enter, so you can create SMA tasks in your Service Manager. So if you want to do that, you can do that. But if you are not so confident in automation, I would still recommend Orchestrator. It's easy to use, easy to get an overview for, and it's easy to get working out of the box with Service Manager. But if you go with Orchestrator, I will highly recommend you to avoid the built-in activities in Orchestrator, but instead use the PowerShell activity only and create scripts for everything. If you create scripts for everything and don't use the built-in activities, it's easier to move all your automation at some point over to SMA or Azure automation because this is based only on PowerShell. Also, you will quickly hit some limits, and this will require a lot of activities in Orchestrator from the built-in ones. You cannot get all fields if you get a CI from the portal. If you want to create a new AD account with the built-in activities, you cannot set all parameters. So PowerShell, PowerShell, PowerShell. This is the answer for all the automation. Mm-hmm. There is a little limitation in Orchestrator that it's only running PowerShell 2. So if you run commands that requires higher version, you should run it in an invoke command. But even if you have SMA or Azure automation, I will still prefer to run everything in an invoke command, so I target the server that I want to run it on. So if I want to do something in Service Manager, I connect to the Service Manager, and then I use Service Manager's server directly to interact with through PowerShell. I will see if maybe I can put some templates up for how we are usually doing this, because we have found a nice template for how to use invoke command with a try catch and final, so you can easily send in and out information in invoke commands. And you can easily catch error messages because invoke command usually hides error messages. This could be an example of a simple runbook created in Orchestrator. We have the first initialized data, which contain all our data sent from Service Manager into Orchestrator. We then go and find the related service request to the runbook we just started. That way we can get all the virtual machines we just related to the service request. I will show you this in the portal. Everything is based on relationship in Service Manager, so you relate everything to each other and then you can pull out the relationships. Then we have a script checking compliance on the virtual machines. This will ensure that the virtual machines is on the same cluster, and then we invoke a modular runbook that adds the shared disk. You should always try to make your runbooks as modular as possible so you can reuse tasks over and over again. But let me show you how this looks like. in Orchestrator. So here we have, you can see the organized runbooks. We have a top one which contain all the service requests, and then we have what you could call the actual worker runbooks further down. So if we take the, let me see if I can find an easy one.
You have a lot of runbooks, Andreas.
Yeah. We have a lot of automation.
Yes, absolutely. Very nice.
Yeah. So as you can see here, for this service request, I only specify the size and the ID for the runbook activity in Service Manager. That way we can relate the virtual machines instead and get dynamic information based on what we have in the Service Manager. And then you can see this one is not a PowerShell activity, it's an invoke runbook. So from here we call another runbook that actually adds the data disk for the virtual machine. And that way, when you split everything into separate runbooks, so we have one runbook just that can only add a data disk, we have one that can only add a network adapter, and so on. That way we can reuse the activities over and over again, instead of putting the actual add data disk task in here. I hope this makes sense. That way you can have one runbook where you have your master task for what you're going to do, and then reuse it over and over. I also use the add data disk in the provisioning Hyper-V VM, because when we provision a VM in Hyper-V, we always add a data disk, so all servers has 2 disks. You can see here, I use the exact same activity, add data disk, and then I can edit it one place instead of having the same script 2 times and do that. Yeah. So start simple, add in more advanced features, more advanced requests, and then you will quickly get benefit from this automation. If you want to show your management how much time you're actually saving on automating, you could add a little value into the Service Manager activities, saying how much time you spent, and then you can do some reporting in the end of the month saying, I spent 2 days of work this month on automating. So to sum up, for the last 22 months, we have been able to create more than 35 automated request offerings in Apollo, all based around infrastructure, and we have 10 or 12 more in the pipeline right now. We are adding more and more every week. We get so positive feedback on this, so everybody is starting to think automated and comes with ideas on what else we can automate. We have completed, now I think it's nearly 2,000 service requests since we started this, and this is all around. I would say 50% of this is deprovisioning servers and maybe 40% is provisioning servers. This has saved up a huge amount of time on cleaning up old stuff and provisioning new, and then also be sure that we have actually cleaned up the old stuff. We also have a consistent CMDB now. We know that the data in there is consistent. It's automatically updated through all the connectors. That way we don't need to take care of it ourselves. We don't need to go in and update when we do something. It actually does it itself by through the connectors and automation. And we get the consistency in our environment. All servers is provisioned the same way. All servers is deleted the same way. All service accounts is provisioned the same way. And we now have the possibility to improve our security, limiting the rights to critical services, and ensure that you only get what you need and not anymore. So I think that was it for me. I hope it was inspiring, and I hope it gave you some ideas on what you could do and how you can get better control on your resources in your environment and save time and money on automating stuff. So back to you, Days.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Andreas. I think it's very obvious for everyone who's seeing it that this is extremely complex, extremely challenging, but some great results when you put the effort in, right? So, and I guess everyone, it's obvious now why we were desperate to get Andreas on this webinar as well, since we met him at SCU a couple of months back, and he told us about the great automation they're doing within the data centers. There's no questions at the moment, but please, if you have any questions, just pop them into the questions bar. There's a couple more slides that I'm going to go through, and then we can open up for questions. Andreas, if you're okay to just continue sharing, if you just move on to the next slide, it's just
I will.
Just run through that. Just open it all up. Just a couple of resources to tell everyone about. So the video for this recording is going to be up on our Vimeo site, hopefully in the next 24 hours. We mentioned the community site for Cireson again during the webinar, but if you haven't joined, please do join us on community.cireson.com. Register, and it's a great source for asking questions to experts. So that obviously Andreas is on there. All of the Cireson employees and a lot of our partners are on that community website, and it's a great forum to ask questions, get answers. Also, submitting feature requests, that's a common one that a lot of customers and partners use it for, so please do use that. And in terms of the Cireson platform, if you want any more information around our solutions, please hit our website up, so cireson.com. And obviously, if you have any of our solutions and you have access to the support and maintenance, you can go get to our support team from support.cireson.com. And then in terms of careers as well, we're always hiring. So just again, check out our careers website at cireson.com/careers. And then just from a perspective of getting in touch with Cireson, I'd say the best way is drop us an email. So team@cireson.com is the email address. If you have any questions or any comments, or if you just want to share some information with us, please just get in touch, and someone from your local regions will get in touch and get back to you. So yeah, if you move on to the next slide. Actually, I should also mention, Andreas, you talked about your Twitter and your blog. There we go. Your Twitter address is there.
Yeah, my blog is on the first page.
Fantastic. Yeah. So please get those details. Andreas, can you just read out your blog address again?
Yeah, it's cloudmechanic.net. I can just add it here.
Brilliant. Yeah, so I think a lot of people should be interested in this. I know I definitely am. And then a couple of things. So please, again, just put your questions into the forum if you have any. A couple of upcoming events I just want to make you aware of. So tomorrow, it's probably quite short notice for everyone if you haven't heard of it already, but in London, if you're in London, please do come and visit us at our offices in Moorgate. So we have Sean Erickson and Paul Sutton from the US, our founders, in the country, and we're hosting a meeting as well as a happy hour in the evening tomorrow. So if you are in London and you can make it, fantastic, please do come and see us. And the other point, just to mention again, which wasn't ready or confirmed when we set up this slide deck, so Andreas, myself, and a couple of other guys from the Cireson UK team will be at Experts Live on the 22nd of November. So again, if you're coming to Experts Live, please come and meet us. It'd be great to talk to you, and you'll have a chance to meet Andreas and talk to him directly there as well. So just a couple of events coming up that you should be aware of. So we've got 5 minutes left, so please, guys, any questions? There's nothing on there right now, but Andreas, a question from me. You've done a lot of great work. How did you measure success? What was the key criteria for you in terms of getting that recognition?
Well, we have many different success criteria because we have our automation and this approach, but then we also have a transition from VMware to Hyper-V going on at the same time.
Yeah.
And our measure of success in that term is how many machines we have managed to move from the one platform to the other through automation, and how many machines we have in Hyper-V, because we know all machines in Hyper-V is done through automation. So we regularly go through what service requests we have available. We go through how many we have completed. I recently did just a quick showdown with my team leader or boss on some key numbers on how many servers have provisioned through this, how many have deprovisioned, how many requests have we completed, and he was just amazed all the time. Have you also done this? Did you also done this? Yeah, we have done this for a long time.
Very good.
Yeah, so that's the way we measure. But you could, let me just show you quickly. I think I have the easiest way to measure your success on this is to go in and extend your classes for the work items, runbook activities, or service request activities. I hope I still have the field available. You could go in and add a parameter called minutes saved by automation, and you could enter that number into all your runbook templates, and with this number you could sum up once a month how many minutes you have saved by automating stuff.
Very cool.
This is a very cool way to show how you save time and money for your organization. It's cool facts. So
brilliant. Thanks, Andreas. I've got a question from Dawn. So what top 3 things have improved your end user experience as a result of these service automations that you've done?
Provisioning and deprovisioning of servers, definitely.
Yeah.
This is the 2 big ones, and then also all the interaction with the virtual machines. They don't need to think about, am I doing it right? Do I provision this virtual machine? And when we made the transition from VMware to Hyper-V, we could abstract the whole virtualization layer and with the Cireson frontend. So people didn't need to learn how Hyper-V worked compared to VMware. They just need to go through the service manager role, use the service request, and they don't care if it's a VMware or it's a Hyper-V machine. It's the same service request.
Cool.
So there was no learning curve from change such a big step as changing hypervisor.
Excellent. And in terms of then the rollout of this is used by all of your IT teams now?
Yeah. It's used, well, all our IT teams, that's maybe a bit, we have quite a lot, but it's used in all infrastructure, all the teams that's placed in infrastructure. It's not used by our developers yet. We're still feeling that we cannot let this out to the developers. They tend a bit to over-provision everything, so we're still figuring out how we allow them to go in and provision.
Of course. Cool. So thanks again, Andreas. And there's no other questions coming in, and we're coming to the end of the hour. So I guess all that's left for me to say is thanks everyone for joining today, this morning. Hopefully you found it inspiring. Some great points, some great tips from Andreas in terms of how they've achieved some of the great success that they have. And especially a big thank you, Andreas, for you for joining us and presenting today. Very interesting and extremely cool. But yeah, thank you everyone, and I'm going to end the webinar here, and I look forward to the video being posted on our Vimeo site so you can review at your leisure again.
Thanks everyone for joining. Don't hesitate to reach out if you have any further questions.
Brilliant. Thanks, Andreas.